Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Deep Penetration Podcast. In case you do not know who I am, my name is Danny, and I am a self esteem and love coach that focuses on the LGBTQ community. I myself identify as bisexual, and the reason for why I created this podcast in general, and the YouTube channel and all of those things was because I wanted to provide a resource, a place for us to be able to have these very open and honest and candid conversations about everything and anything. And the reason why it's called Deep Penetration is because I love a good pun, and two, because I wanted to get to the bottom of certain topics and questions and get to the root of issues and really try to unpack the reasons for why we navigate relationships the way that we do sometimes, or individual self perception, right? Issues that we may have with our own identity, and just in general be able to have a safe space to have these types of conversations. So I hope that you guys find this information to be helpful. A lot of what I talk about and the subject matter that I talk about are based on conversations that I have with clients on a daily basis, right? So I have been a love and a relationship coach for a few years, and I have worked with hundreds of individuals and couples that, are experiencing difficulty and in love and self and those types of things. So it was important for me to be able to have a platform that I can reach a larger group of people who may be experiencing the same thing. So if this is you, I welcome you, and I hope that you find this information to be helpful. So what is the topic for today? What is the episode about? And I wanted to record this episode because it was inspired by a coaching session that I had not too long ago. And essentially, I had a client come to me and say, my partner just told me that they want to have an open relationship, and I have no idea how to navigate this situation. I don't even know if this is something that I want to partake in. And really, it's kind of just thrown me for a loop. So if you have ever experienced this before, or if you are currently experiencing this, I empathize with you. I know that it's not easy to navigate this type of situation, but honestly, it happens quite often, particularly in the LGBTQ plus community. Open relationship is not an uncommon thing. And there was a study that was conducted, and I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I can provide you guys with the resource in the details section. And essentially, what it said is that it found that a high percentage of gay couples opened up their relationship around the 7-year mark. So here's my thing with open relationships. I have no issues with open relationships. I think that every person has the right to navigate relationships in life in any way that they so choose. And I am a huge proponent of you knowing what is right for you. But here's the thing. If from the start you are the type of individual who wants to have an open relationship, and you meet somebody who is more of a monogamous mindset, and you just don't want to miss the opportunity of dating this person, then it's very important that you sit back and you reflect prior to making the decision of getting into a relationship with that person, because already at the start, you guys have two different mentalities when it comes to dating. That's the first thing. The second thing is communication. Be very open and honest up front. I think that that is the best approach, because it gives both parties the ability to decide whether it is something they are willing to invest time and energy into, and honestly, just emotionally and mentally invest the time and the ups and downs that may potentially come with being in an open relationship. It's not that open relationships do not have the capability of being successful or fulfilling. It's about ensuring that both people are on the same page, and that there are rules and essentially a protocols that are in place when it comes to that open relationship. So let me go back to this individual, right? When I was working with them and they brought up the fact that their partner had asked if they wanted to be in an open relationship and they were trying to figure out whether it was something that they had the capability of doing. The first question that I asked was, how did you feel when your partner brought that up? It's one thing to think something, it's another thing to feel something. And if that feeling is one of fear, anxiety, stress, those things are all very normal for that type of situation. And it's because it's something that is unfamiliar, it's unknown. There's a lot of uncertainties, especially if you are not the type of individual who has ever been in an open relationship before. Now, that being said, it's important to understand why those anxieties and those fears are there. Is it because it does not align with your core values and who you are? Or is it because there is a sense of fear that your partner might leave you for somebody else, right? Those are two very different things. Now, if it is because it does not align with your core values, then that is a more serious discussion that has to be had. That is something that you really have to sit with yourself and say, am I willing to flex and compromise on who I am as an individual at a core level? And if the answer is no, then at that point it's important to take the steps necessary to maybe remove yourself from that relationship and obviously try to do it in the most amicable way as possible. Now, if it is because there is a fear that your partner might leave you for somebody else, there's a couple of things to take into consideration, right? So the first one is if that person wanted to leave you for somebody else, they probably would have already done it, number one. And number two, there's always the potential or the possibility for infidelity. So the fact that that person has the courage and is willing to communicate with you their needs and expectations in that moment and try to involve you in that, I view that as a positive, as long as they are not trying to manipulate you or force you into a decision. Let me be very clear on that. I'm going to say that again. As long as they are not trying to manipulate you or force you into a decision, they are just letting you know where they're at mentally, emotionally, what their needs are physically, and they are hoping that you are willing to partake in that. Now, that being said, if you so choose to go down that road, it is very important that there are certain rules that are set up very early on from the beginning that are non-negotiables and things that you're willing to flex on. So what are some of those things? So for example, are you going to play together or are you going to play separately? That is a big one. Most of the time when people transition into an open relationship, it initially starts with playing with each other, right? So it's you, your partner, and a third party individual who's coming into the dynamic of the relationship. Now, if that's the case, we want to dive a little bit deeper, right? What are the roles going to be when you guys are intimate with one another? Are you going to remain in contact with that person as a regular, or is it going to be a one-time type of situation that happens every so often, right? So maybe it's something that you guys do once a month, once every 3 months. It completely depends on what you guys decide upon. Is there going to be a specific type of individual that you bring into the bedroom? Is it going to be, another couple that you bring in? Whatever it is that you guys decide, it's very important that you have this very clear and transparent conversation prior to moving forward with anything that has to do with the open relationship. Once the two of you guys have agreed upon the rules and how you guys are going to move forward in that situation, view it as a contract, right? You are holding each other accountable to that contract. But keep in mind, contracts can change. And they likely will change over a period of time. And that is where communication is key, right? Having check-ins with one another, making sure that you guys are still comfortable with this dynamic, making sure that, you are reviewing the rules. Let's say, for example, you guys have an experience with another person, and there is something that makes you uncomfortable about that experience. Instead of bottling that up, not communicating, repressing those feelings, be vocal about the experience, be vocal about, what you liked and what you didn't like. Believe me when I tell you that your partner will appreciate that far more than not saying anything and then starting to develop a very passive aggressive way of handling not only the open relationship situation itself, but the relationship itself, right? How you communicate, how you interact with your partner on a daily basis. So again, if something makes you uncomfortable, communicate it. If something turns you on, communicate it. All of those things are going to be a very important part. And the relationships that I find to be the most successful when it comes to an open relationship are the ones where vulnerability has been a intrinsic part of that relationship. There is a strong foundation in friendship, and there are strong communication skills. So if you struggle with any three of these areas, it might be difficult for you to be able to navigate an open relationship. So to circle back to that client, essentially that person decided to try the open relationship, and they realized that it wasn't something for them. It wasn't something that they were happy with. They were willing to put themselves out there just to be supportive to their partner and the most important part, to allow themselves to experience something that they hadn't experienced before because it did not go against their core values and they did not feel like it was going to result in them becoming misaligned. And they tried it, they experimented, and it just was not for them. They did end up breaking up, unfortunately, but the fortunate thing is that they remained friends because they were able to do that amicably and understand that there were just different needs at this point in the relationship that either one of them were not able to fulfill. So again, I say all of that to say, there is nothing wrong with an open relationship, especially if you have experienced that yourself or you're considering that yourself, or maybe it's been a conversation that's been, a part of your relationship. The most important part is understanding that it is something that you are open to and does not go against your core values, and that you are very, very, very open and vulnerable and communicative throughout the entire process, and that you are setting very clear and strict rules and guidelines going into that dynamic. I hope you guys found this episode helpful, especially if this is something that you are experiencing, something that you've experienced in the past, or even if it's something that you experience in the future. Maybe now you have a little bit more information, some tools, some resources that you can pull from to navigate that situation in a healthier way. If you guys, again, found this to be helpful, please support the podcast and make sure that you are subscribing to the podcast. And I will see you guys in the next episode.